The story of Pnina Tamano-Shata begins far from the halls of government, in a small village in northern Ethiopia. Born in 1981, she was only a child when her family embarked on one of the most dangerous migration journeys of the 20th century. Alongside thousands of Beta Israel Jews, they crossed the deserts of Sudan during Operation Moses, fleeing famine, violence, and uncertainty in search of a homeland they had only known through faith and tradition. The journey was brutal. Families walked for weeks through harsh terrain with little food or water. Disease spread through refugee camps. Many never survived the crossing. For young Pnina, these experiences became more than childhood memories. They became the foundation of her understanding of survival, identity, and responsibility. Long before entering politics, she learned what it meant to fight for dignity. When her family finally arrived in Israel, the dream of belonging quickly collided with reality. Ethiopian immigrants often face discrimination, economic hardship, and social isolation. Growing up in boarding schools and later serving in the Israel Defense Forces as a sergeant, Pnina witnessed the invisible barriers that prevented many Ethiopian Jews from advancing in society. She saw a country built on promises of equality struggle to fully include people who look different from the majority. But instead of retreating into silence, she chose confrontation through education and public voice. She studied law, determined to understand the systems shaping people's lives. Later, as a journalist, she began exposing the racial and social inequalities that much of the public preferred not to see. Her reporting challenged institutions directly, forcing conversations about fairness, identity, and integration into the national spotlight. In 2013, Pnina Tamano-Shata shattered a historic barrier when she became the first Ethiopian-born woman elected to the Knesset, Israel's parliament. Her arrival was not symbolic, it was disruptive. She immediately became one of the strongest voices advocating for civil rights and equal treatment for marginalized communities. One of her most famous campaigns targeted the discriminatory rejection of blood donations from Ethiopian-Israelis, a policy many viewed as humiliating and racist. Her leadership style combined determination with restraint. She fought aggressively against injustice while remaining deeply committed to the democratic unity of Israel itself. To her, criticism was not betrayal. It was an act of responsibility. She believed that real patriotism meant confronting flaws rather than ignoring them. Then in 2020, history came full circle. Pnina Tamano-Shata was appointed Israel's Minister of Aliyah and Integration. The little girl who had once crossed deserts as a refugee was now the government official responsible for helping other Jewish families find safety and belonging in Israel. As the first black woman ever appointed to an Israeli cabinet position, her rise represented a moment that would have seemed impossible only decades earlier. But her role extended beyond symbolism. She oversaw the logistics of Operation Zor Israel, coordinating the airlift of thousands of Ethiopian Jews who had waited for decades in transit camps to reunite with their families. For Pnina, this mission was personal. She understood the emotional weight carried by every family boarding those planes because she had once been one of those children herself. Her political philosophy reflects a deep understanding that laws alone do not create justice. Systems must actively remove barriers that keep people trapped at the margins. Whether advocating for education funding, immigrant rights, or structural reforms, her focus has remained on building institutions that function fairly in practice, not just in theory. Today, Pnina Tamano-Shata stands as more than a politician. She represents the possibility of transformation through resilience. A refugee turned minister, an outsider turned national leader. Her life demonstrates that the people who understand society's fractures most deeply are often the ones best equipped to heal them. For many diaspora communities across the Middle East and beyond, Pnina Tamano-Shata has become a symbol of cultural survival in the modern world. Her story is not simply about politics, it is about identity, about carrying the memory of one homeland while building a future in another. Even after reaching the highest levels of Israeli government, Pnina never abandoned the heritage that shaped her. She continued speaking openly about the traditions, struggles, and values of the Ethiopian Jewish community, refusing to allow assimilation to erase cultural memory. In a society constantly negotiating questions of belonging, she became proof that integration does not require the destruction of identity. This balance between preservation and adaptation became one of her greatest strengths as a leader. She could navigate international diplomacy, legal institutions, and parliamentary politics, while still understanding the fears and frustrations of immigrant families trying to survive inside systems they did not fully trust. Her perspective allowed her to see what many insiders could not: the hidden obstacles buried within bureaucracies and social structures. Throughout her career, she repeatedly emphasized that fairness cannot remain an abstract ideal. Governments must actively create conditions where opportunity becomes real. To her, equality was not charity, it was infrastructure. It required schools that functioned properly, immigration systems that respected human dignity, and public institutions willing to confront their own blind spots. Her work often focused on people living at the edges of society, immigrant families, disadvantaged youth, and communities that felt invisible within national conversations. She understood that leadership is measured not by how a nation treats its most powerful citizens, but by how it treats those still struggling to find their place within it. What makes Nina's story especially powerful is the contrast between where it began and where it led. A child crossing deserts under the threat of starvation and violence eventually stood inside government chambers, making decisions that shaped national policy. The same state that once represented hope from a distance became the system she helped reform from within. But perhaps her greatest legacy lies in what she represents psychologically. Pnina Tamano-Shata embodies the idea that being an outsider can become a source of clarity rather than weakness. People who have experienced exclusion often develop the ability to recognize injustice long before others notice it. They understand the emotional cost of broken systems because they have lived inside them. Her rise also challenges old assumptions about leadership itself. Traditionally, power has often been associated with privilege, legacy, or elite status. Pnina's life suggests something different: that true leadership can emerge from struggle, displacement, and survival, that resilience can become a political force. Today, her story continues to resonate far beyond Israel. To immigrant communities, refugees, and young people growing up between cultures, she represents the possibility of turning adversity into influence. She proves that identity does not have to be hidden in order to succeed, and that history's greatest leaders are often the ones who carry multiple worlds within them. From a child refugee in Ethiopia to a cabinet minister shaping the future of a nation, Pnina Tamano-Shata's journey stands as a reminder that history is not only written by those born into power. Sometimes it is written by those who walk through deserts to reach it.